My landlord knew I was desperate, and he had an offer I could hardly believe. But to understand that moment, you have to understand the quiet, desperate erosion of my life before it. My name is Elena. For 30 years, I've been learning how to see the world in shades of ochre, cerulean, and Payne's gray. I live in a cramped studio apartment. A single room where my bed, my kitchen, and my soul all breathe the same dusty air. The city thrums outside my window, a constant, impersonal pulse of traffic and distant sirens. But in here, the only sound is the scratch of charcoal or the soft sigh of a brush against canvas. My world is made of paint, of stretched linen, and of a silence so profound it sometimes feels like its own kind of sound. Painting isn't just what I do. It's the mechanism by which I process the world. When I'm lost in the swirl of color, I am not a woman with bills or fears or a past. I am simply a conduit for light and shadow. The good months are a rare and beautiful gift, a validation that momentarily quiets the ever-present anxiety. A sale, especially a significant one, sends a shockwave of relief through my entire being. It means fresh, colorful groceries from the market down the street, real vegetables, fruit that isn't bruised or discounted, maybe even a piece of fish. It means logging into my bank account and paying the electricity, the internet, the student loan that never seems to shrink, all with a few decisive clicks. The satisfaction is physical. A lightness in my shoulders, a deep, uninterrupted sleep where dreams are abstract and not nightmares of eviction. In those weeks, I walk taller. I feel like a creator, a real artist, a person with a place in the grand, messy tapestry of the city. But the bad months? They don't just arrive, they seep in. They steal your peace grain by grain, like sand through an hourglass. The savings you meticulously built over 2 good months begin to vanish, the number dwindling with each automated payment that still goes out. The colorful groceries are the first to go. Meals become plain, functional fuel. Rice, dried beans, day-old bread from the bakery's discount rack. A tablespoon of butter feels like a luxury. You learn to move slowly through the apartment, as if conserving physical motion might also conserve financial energy. You become an expert in the passive act of waiting. Waiting for inspiration. Waiting for an email reply from a gallery. Waiting for a miracle. You feel invisible, not just to the city, but to the flow of life itself. And my rent. Oh, my rent was my own personal mountain. A sheer granite cliff face I was expected to scale every 30 days. Each month, the summit seemed to recede further into the clouds, the number at the top growing heavier, more abstract, more impossible. I missed the first payment with a flutter of nervous guilt, convinced I'd catch up. The second miss was accompanied by a cold, sinking dread that settled in my stomach. By the time the third month dawned with that bill still glaring from my kitchen counter, my bank account was dust. Dry, empty, barren dust. I developed rituals of avoidance. I stopped answering my phone, letting every call from an unknown number go to a voicemail box I was too afraid to check. My email inbox became a haunted place. But the physical world couldn't be muted. The sharp, authoritative knock of a fist on a wooden door would send my heart into my throat, my breath catching as if I'd been plunged into icy water. I would freeze, a statue in the middle of my own home, praying the person would just go away. I knew, with a certainty that was both terrifying and perversely calming, that he would come. Mr. Hayes. He owned not just my building, but several on the block. He wasn't a cartoon villain. He was a quiet, serious man in his late 40s, always dressed in neat, practical clothes. He spoke sparingly, his eyes missing nothing. Our interactions had always been brief, transactional, and polite. He'd nod if we passed in the lobby. Once he'd remarked on a painting I was carrying, a simple, interesting colors, and I'd clung to that faint acknowledgement for weeks. One gray Tuesday morning, after a sleepless night spent staring at a crack in my ceiling that had begun to look like a map of my failures, the inevitable knock came. It wasn't loud or angry. It was firm, measured, and final. My hands, usually so steady with a brush, trembled as if palsied. My mouth was desert dry. I wrapped my threadbare robe tighter around myself, a flimsy shield, and walked the 10 slow paces to the door. Each step echoed in the hollow silence of the room. I turned the lock, took a breath that did nothing to calm me, and opened the door. He stood there in the dim hallway light, looking weary. Not angry, just profoundly tired. As if the weight of managing these buildings and the fragile people within them was a burden he carried in his shoulders. His face was calm, but his eyes, usually so observant, were firm, resolved. "Elena," he said. His voice was low. "3 months. We must settle this." The words were a guillotine blade held in place. I felt a desperate, scrambling energy rise up. I pleaded, my voice thin and reedy, a child's voice. "Just 1 more week, Mr. Hayes. Only 7 days. I have a client, a serious collector. They're very interested in a large piece. The deposit alone would cover it. I promise." He didn't roll his eyes or shout. He just sighed, a long, weary exhalation, and stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. His presence immediately shrank the room. He wasn't a large man, but he filled the space with a palpable reality my anxieties lacked. His gaze traveled slowly around the room, taking in the paintings leaning against every wall, the canvases stacked in the corner, the tubes of paint littering the small table. It was an inventory. "Promises are just words now, Elena," he stated softly, almost kindly. The gentleness in his tone made it worse. The truth in his words didn't just sting. It lanced through the last of my hope. He'd heard this before, from me or from others. The struggling artist with the big break, always just 1 week away. I had nothing left to say. No more stories to spin. The silence that followed was thick and humiliating. Then he moved closer. The afternoon light from my single window cut across the room, and I could see dust motes dancing in the beam between us. His gaze wasn't on my art anymore. It had settled on me, on my face, my unbrushed hair, the robe I was clutching closed. It was a different kind of observation, not assessing property but assessing a person. It felt entirely new, and dangerously intimate. "Perhaps," he murmured, the word barely more than a breath, "we can find another arrangement. A more personal understanding." For a second my mind, fogged with fear and shame, didn't process it. Then it did. The meaning landed in my gut like a stone. A cold, clear clarity washed over me, cutting through the fog. This was wrong. It was a grotesque imbalance. He held all the power of the roof over my head, the power of the debt, the power of his calm authority. My own terrifying fear and my crushing loneliness were conspiring to twist this moment into something it shouldn't be. A voice inside me, small but sharp as a diamond, screamed to step back, to say no, to find any other way. He hadn't touched me. He hadn't moved beyond that step closer. He was waiting, his expression unreadable. The choice, technically, was still mine. That was the most terrifying part of all. But I was so tired of the struggle, of the loneliness that was a colder companion than any empty bank account. I was tired of being invisible. In his gaze, in this terrible, twisted moment, I was seen. It was a poison kind of recognition, but it was recognition nonetheless. I didn't step back. I stayed rooted to the spot, a prisoner of my own need. He leaned in slowly, giving me one last fragment of a second to refuse. I closed my eyes. We kissed. It wasn't romantic. It was a transaction commencing. But for those few hours, my mind performed a merciful escape. The crushing weight of the debt, the constant background hum of fear, the icy grip of loneliness, all of it receded, muffled under a blanket of physical sensation. In his arms, in my narrow bed, I felt a semblance of warmth, a fleeting, illusionary sense of being wanted, of being valued for something other than my productivity or my ability to pay. The night passed in a blur of surrendered autonomy. Dawn changed everything. The gray light revealed the room for what it was. Messy, small, and filled with the evidence of my struggle. He was already up, dressing with a brisk, efficient silence. He avoided my eyes, focusing on his buttons, his shoes. He offered no soft morning smile, no tender word, not even a mundane good morning. The man from the night before was gone, replaced by the landlord. He left with a final, quiet click of the door latch, as if sealing the night inside a vault, a secret to be buried and never acknowledged. I sat on the rumpled sheets, the hollow weight in my chest expanding to fill the whole room. The physical warmth was gone, replaced by a deeper chill. Had any of it meant anything to him? Had there been a flicker of genuine connection? Or was I merely a line item on his ledger? A debt collected in the most personal currency possible? The shame arrived then, hot and corrosive. I had traded one form of desperation, loneliness, for a deeper, more intimate shame. I felt stained. Days later, the shame found its voice. I was in the building's hallway, taking out my meager trash, when I saw them, Mrs. Allen from 4B and old Mr. Chun from the ground floor. They were huddled near the stairs, their heads close together in conversation. Their lively chatter died the instant they saw me. A switch flipped. I, wanting to seem normal, to project that nothing was wrong, offered a weak, tight smile and a nod. They did not smile back. Mrs. Allen's face, usually friendly, became a polite mask. Mr. Chun studied the floor with sudden intense interest. As I shuffled past them, the air thick with unsaid things, I heard it. Mrs. Allen's whisper, not nearly quiet enough, meant to be heard. That's the one. The painter. Pays with favors instead of cash, I hear. The world didn't just tilt, it shattered. The floor seemed to fall away beneath my feet. My ears buzzed with a high-pitched ring. How? How could they possibly know? The walls, I thought desperately. Did they hear? Or had Mr. Hayes said something? A boast? A complaint? I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I fled back to my apartment, fumbling with the key, locking the door behind me and sliding down to sit against it. Then the tears came, not soft tears of sadness, but harsh gasping sobs of hot, utter humiliation. I was gossip. I was a cautionary tale. My last shred of dignity in this building was gone. That very evening, as if summoned by the spreading rumor, he returned. His knock was familiar now. I opened the door feeling numb. He didn't enter. He stood in the threshold, a businessman on a doorstep. People are talking, Elena, he said, his voice tight, edged with a concern that was entirely for himself. This situation. It looks bad. For me. For my business's reputation. He couldn't even name what this was. My heart didn't just break in that moment. It petrified, turned to cold, hard stone. He wasn't here to see if I was okay. He wasn't here to apologize or explain. He was here to manage a public relations problem. I was the problem. His weakness, his fear of gossip, was his greatest mask, revealing the small man behind the landlord. Something definitive shifted inside me. The fear evaporated, burned away by a cold, clear fury. I stood up straight, pulling my shoulders back for the first time in months. My voice, when it came, was calm, steady, and mine. I didn't stay with you to pay a debt, Mr. Hayes. I was lonely, and for a moment, I thought you saw me. Not my rent, not a problem. But you don't see anyone. You only see yourself, and what people might think of you. I began packing that night. There was no frenzy, just a determined, methodical rhythm. I wrapped my canvases in cheap blankets. I folded my clothes into 2 suitcases. The pain of leaving, of being forced out, was immense, a physical ache. But beneath it, fanned by my own defiance, a tiny, stubborn ember sparked and grew. It was the warm glow of freedom. This was my choice now. To leave. 2 months later, I breathed different air. I live in a different part of the city, in a room even smaller, but it is unquestionably, completely mine. No one here knows my past. The walls are bare, waiting for new stories. I paint again, not from a place of desperation, but from a quieter, more genuine need. I sleep through the night, a deep, dreamless sleep of exhaustion earned by honest work. I'd taken a part-time job framing pictures at a local shop. And I saved. Slowly, coin by coin, bill by bill. When I had enough, I placed the full amount I owed, 3 months' rent calculated to the penny, in a plain envelope. I didn't include a note. I mailed it to Mr. Hayes's management office. The act wasn't for his forgiveness or his ledger. It was for my own peace. It was the final edit on that chapter of my life. One rain-slicked afternoon, he appeared at my new door. He looked out of place, smaller somehow. He asked if I'd like to get coffee to talk. He said the words I'd once ached to hear. I'm sorry for how it all happened. I looked at him, standing there in the drizzle, the ghost of my old life, of my old, desperate self. I felt nothing. No anger, no hurt, not even pity. Just a vast, peaceful emptiness where all those emotions used to live. I had chosen myself. That choice had been everything. It had rebuilt me. I looked at him, and I simply said, "No." Then I closed the door. If this story of resilience and difficult choices moved you, please like this video. It genuinely helps our channel, Winds of Thought, continue to bring you powerful and immersive English narratives that help you learn through compelling stories.